Welcome to Inside Athletic Training, a podcast from the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainer Society and the ultimate destination for athletic training professionals, students, and educators looking to learn more about sports medicine and athletic training. In each episode, we'll dive headfirst into conversations with experts in the field, bringing you insights, stories, and cutting-edge information about athletic training and sports medicine. This week on Inside Athletic Training, we welcome in Dr. Steve Cohen, the head team physician for the Philadelphia Phillies. Enjoy the show. All right, Steve, welcome to the Inside Athletic Training podcast. We are super excited to have you on for episode 55 of the show. You are a board-certified sports medicine surgeon, currently serving as the head team physician and medical director for the Philadelphia Phillies. We'll get into all the cool stuff about your current role with the club and your operations and day-to-day responsibilities. But first, I want to share with the listeners a bit more about you and your background. So if we take it back to the beginning, share with the listeners about where you're from, whether you're into sports growing up, and also how you found your passion for sports medicine.
Yeah, well, Sam, thanks very much for having me on. I'm honored to be the first team physician to be on the PBAS podcast, so that is quite an honor for me. So I'm originally from southern New Jersey, or South Jersey, as most of us call it. I grew up the youngest of three boys, so I have two older brothers. Sports was something that we just was part of our life. I had a father who played collegiate basketball at Temple University. Two older brothers who played baseball and football. One brother played baseball and football at Dickinson College. Other brother initially played some football at Albright College. And so I grew up playing baseball and football and a little bit of basketball. Although if you know me, my height kind of precluded the basketball side of things. So really enjoyed both of those. Again, kind of focused a little bit more towards the baseball side of things, and was at a high school that was a very successful high school, nationally ranked, in high school, state champions 4 years in a row, produced a lot of collegiate athletes, who went on to play baseball, and several professional, even finished number one in the country 2 years after I left. So baseball was probably the biggest thing for me growing up.
And when you, kind of grew up and were playing sports, was there any, event or something throughout your playing career that kind of pushed you toward the sports medicine route in your career?
Yeah, I believe when I was 12, I had a fracture of my patella from sliding into third base, if I can recall right. It caused me to miss about a month of a little league season, which at the time, you think is so devastating, but obviously is not is a minimal amount of time. And so that was, my first initial injury. I did injure my knee and tore my meniscus my senior year in high school playing football. So those were a couple of injuries that, maybe kind of led me to a little bit of the topic of going into sports medicine. I did have a uncle who is a family practice physician in central Maine. I went up to visit him when I had an interest in medicine, and, spent some time with him and his wife, who was also a physician. And then he connected me with an orthopedic surgeon. So I think I was 10 or 11 or 12 and spent some time with an orthopedic surgeon. And I think that was kind of the clicking point for me that was something I really wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. And, I want to start by talking a bit more about your education before we jump into your career path and more details about your role with the Phillies. So you earned a medical degree from UMDNJ, Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, also completed your orthopedic residency at the University of Virginia, and went on to complete your sports medicine fellowship at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Curious, when you were going through school and working through your residency and your fellowship and everything that was demanded of you, did you have an eye on baseball specifically? Has it always been your goal to kind of work with a club in Major League Baseball?
So the interesting thing about this is no, 100% no. I had no no goals or specific plan of being a team physician in baseball. So throughout medical school, so Robert Wood Johnson is now is technically the Rutgers Medical School. So as being from New Jersey, that was kind of a good fit for me. You go through, all the different branches of medicine, from general surgery to psychiatry to internal medicine to pediatrics. So, you really have to be broad in your evaluation of what you want to do. I would clearly be lying to you if I said that orthopedics wasn't kind of the priority for me, even going into medical school. But you just really never know, and you never know if surgery is going to be the thing for you. Or, but orthopedics was certainly, my goal. Having rotated through the different fields of medicine, surgery was still, my target. I was lucky enough to earn the residency at the University of Virginia, where as a resident, you really predominantly take care of football if you're working with sports teams as a resident. So I worked with a local high school called the Blue Root School in the foothills of Central Virginia, where you're the only doctor out there and there's no hospital 30 miles away. So you're doing that. I worked with a little bit of University of Virginia basketball. I worked with James Madison football. And I spent, a few days every once in a while. I'd go out to University of Virginia baseball games, but, nothing really, formally from a medical standpoint. And then you go into to fellowship. And again, very similar at the University of Pittsburgh, your focus is taking care of football. So I worked with the Pittsburgh Steelers, worked with Duquesne University, and then we do some other sports. I took care of University of Pittsburgh women's basketball team. And then the spring comes and we took care of a little bit of Pittsburgh Penguins hockey, but baseball really wasn't really a goal for me at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and looking back on your career, when you maybe didn't know what you wanted to get into or were kind of trying to find your way, did you have any specific role models in the field of sports medicine who really showed you the way and that you looked up to on your path toward Major League Baseball?
Absolutely. So you certainly don't get anywhere in this field without really having role models. And the old saying is you stand on the shoulders of giants. And ironically, when I was at Columbia, and I know we'll get into that in just a little bit, I was looking for a summer job doing research, and Jim Gossett, who's the head athletic trainer at Columbia, and I spent a little bit of time doing some student athletic training kind of off season from baseball. And I approached him about looking for a summer job, and he connected me with Dr. Russell Warren, who was at the time the surgeon-in-chief of the Hospital for Special Surgery and was the head team physician for the New York Giants football team. So I did some research with him, and one of his partners happened to be David Alchek, who is the senior medical director for the New York Mets and was the Mets team physician at the time. So, while doing some research and working with the group in New York, spent some time with the Giants, but also would go out to Mets games with the fellows and with Dr. Alchek, and just got a feel for, what is it like to be in a major league clubhouse, and what is it like to be involved in baseball medicine. And honestly, even despite my experience with that, it wasn't like a goal moving forward that was something that you really thought about. But, clearly Russ Warren and Dave Alchek were huge role models for me. And when I got to University of Virginia, it was Mark Miller, who is, obviously a huge name in orthopedics with his review course and his textbooks, and was an unbelievable role model for me. Dave Beduck was another one at the University of Virginia, who I spent some time doing research with, and he took care of football and basketball at the University of Virginia. So those were two really, really, influential people in my life. And then once you get to Pittsburgh, obviously there's Freddie Fu, but, I would say that the person that I was closest with was Jim Bradley, who was the head team physician for the last 30 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Jim really took me under his wing, and to this day is a very close friend. And I'm sure we'll get into this, but then coming to the Rossman Institute in Philadelphia, Mike Zicotti, who was the head team physician and medical director for years and years, he's the head of our sports department, and again, a huge role model for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, there's no getting to a point in your career where you're at with so much accomplishments without great people showing you the way along, the road. So interesting to hear your stories there. You did reference your time at Columbia, and I know you played collegiate baseball there during your time. I'm interested to hear more about how that time playing collegiate baseball sparked your interest in the medicine aspect of baseball. And also wondering if there were any injuries you experienced that you kind of look back on and think like, hey, I would have handled that differently now that I'm in the position I'm in.
Yeah, playing baseball, it's when you're 18, 19, and 20. Unfortunately, you don't see a whole lot further than probably 10 feet ahead of yourself. Although, again, I clearly had the target and the goal of becoming a physician. Again, I don't know that playing necessarily kind of made me think that that's something that I wanted to do from a medical standpoint, taking care of teams. Mm-hmm. But, obviously being around the game and having a love of the game I don't know that it's critical. I think that I've met, I think we'll talk about this as well, so many physicians within, our team physician society and groups and everybody's different. Not everybody has a huge passion for baseball. Some people take care of the teams and, they just love taking care of athletes. Just happens to be baseball. I happen to love baseball. So for me, it really fits and it's easy for me. I could go out and watch batting practice and watch infield, outfield, and, be around the game all day long and not have any issue with that at all. Whereas some physicians don't even go out to the seats or watch the games live. So, I think it varies. But ultimately, my time at Columbia really kind of set me up for the next steps in my life, playing, baseball and trying to become a physician. Certainly not the easiest thing in the world. You have labs to juggle with. You have, at the time the Ivy League was playing 2 doubleheaders every weekend. So that was a full Saturday and Sunday and maybe travel on Friday or travel on Sunday. I basically had to only take, my science labs on Monday because we could have non-conference games on Tuesday or Wednesday. And, I could afford to miss, a practice on Monday. So, it certainly, it made things a little bit challenging, but wouldn't have changed it for sure.
Sure. Definitely busy. I'm sure as a college athlete looking to get in the medical field, I can't imagine there's much more stressful routes to get through college, but obviously you made it through. So, well, Steve, I want to talk a bit more about your path toward working with the Phillies and becoming their medical director, head team physician. Were the Phillies a club when you were in the area, a club you had your eye on? Was there a relationship? How did that kind of working relationship between you and the club come about?
So as I mentioned, I grew up in southern New Jersey, and if you're, within probably 20 miles of Philadelphia. So I grew up a Philadelphia fan. So I followed, all the sports, whether it was, the Eagles or the Flyers or the Sixers, and certainly the Phillies as well. And, no, I had no specific connection. I had no specific target of, I want to work for the Philadelphia Phillies going through my career. It's just not one of those things that, I think it's the idea of becoming a professional athlete, right? Like you could say that that's your target, but that's so far on the horizon that it's difficult to even see. My path back to Philadelphia was, I did my fellowship in Pittsburgh and, it's from the area, and my wife at the time was also from the area. So we were kind of targeting coming back to the Philadelphia location. I looked into practices, and it just so happened that Rothman Institute or Rothman Orthopedics, as our title is now, was kind of the biggest practice, taking care of a lot of teams, but, a big sports group. Again, I mentioned Mike Zicotti, a very influential name in sports medicine orthopedics, is, the head of the department. And I just approached him really about joining the practice, not necessarily anything related to the team. And when I was lucky enough to get the job, at the Rothman Institute, he was taking care of the Phillies. We had other doctors taking care of the Eagles, other group taking care of the Flyers. And he had just approached me. I guess he knew my baseball background and my sports background, and said, "Is it something that you would be interested in getting involved with?" And that's how it started.
Yeah, definitely a long road like anybody, but ending up in basically your hometown with your hometown club is certainly awesome for sure. Well, I want to get into more about the day-to-day responsibilities and the duties of someone in your position in Major League Baseball. A lot of our listeners are athletic training students, younger athletic trainers who know a lot about that profession, but maybe not so much how that relates and works with the head team physician. So can you share with the listeners a bit about your main duties and responsibilities within your current role with the Phillies?
Yeah, I think that, part of it is actually kind of building up and, from when I started in 2006 with our practice, and 2007 was my first year with the team. And, you say, well, what were my roles then? And well, when you're, 1 year into practice, or, 8 months into practice, and I would say this to any athletic training student or any young physician, you don't assume any roles or any titles or any duties without earning it and starting at the bottom. And as anybody who listens to this as an athletic trainer, you know how it works, right? I mean, you're not the head athletic trainer for a high school or I'm sorry, a collegiate football team right when you join. I mean, you have to build this up. And so, very similar to me, I was taking care of, working with the team, covering some games, really had very little, responsibilities as far as, the major league club. I would cover some games, go to spring training, and then slowly kind of build that up. And we had, a short season A team in Williamsport. So I would go to Williamsport, do the end of the season physicals for our minor league team. And then I would go to spring training, and, every year kind of became a little bit more, you kind of get ingrained in the system. You learn how to deal with it. And then in 2000, and at the end of the 2015 season, Dr. Michael Cicciotti, as I mentioned, approached me about being the head team physician. So, at the time I was an assistant team physician. Okay, well, then now I'm the head team physician. And, well, what does that involve? Obviously, then that was taking over, the day-to-day roles with the major league club, being involved with the minor league club. He was still serving as the medical director, but just kind of overseeing, the entire process. And from 2016 until last season, similar things, really building up bigger and bigger responsibilities every day, every year, taking care of all the minor league teams, taking care of, everything relating to spring training. And then at the end of the 2023 season, Dr. Scotty said, I've been doing this for 25 to 30 years. I'm going to step away for good. And now you can assume, the role of head team physician and medical director. Does that change anything for me? Not particularly, not in my current state, and not what's been going on overall the last several years. But as you mentioned, the day-to-day roles are, again, so we're currently in spring training. So we have 185 minor league players in camp. We have, 40 to 60 players in major league camp. So my responsibility is taking care of every one of those athletes to some degree. We also have another group of 40 to 60 players in our Dominican Academy. So every day we receive an injury report from Dominican Academy, from minor leagues, major leagues. And then when we break camp and go into each of our teams, we'll have an injury report from the Dominican Academy, from our low A team, our high A team, our double A team, our triple A team, our major league team, and our rehab group, as well as our Florida, our FCL team, which is our Florida State League team, which we have 2 teams there. So it's every athlete, every team that we've taken care of. Now we do have minor league physicians that help us out at each of our locations. So in Clearwater, we do have a physician that's there in case we need it. Same thing in Jersey Shore, which is in Lakewood, our double A team in Reading, and then our triple A team in Lehigh Valley.
Yeah, very, very interesting to hear kind of your perspective on that. So much going on in the sports medicine world, and especially a time like now at spring training where you kind of get your baseline for going forward with the season. Well, most of our listeners know that the athletic training and sports medicine departments within Major League Baseball clubs are growing exponentially, much like you do. One interesting aspect is kind of the relationship between head team physician and the athletic trainers. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, how that relationship kind of grows over time, and also, is there a main point of contact? Is it Paul, who's the head athletic trainer with the Phillies? Is there someone you kind of report back to mostly through your time in terms of the chain of communication?
So, as you mentioned, Paul Buchheit is our head athletic trainer. Paul and I pretty much speak on a daily basis. I would say that there are a few days that go that we haven't either spoken on the phone or texted. So it is a daily communication. And I will tell you that, and anybody who's listening to this knows that the relationship between team physician and athletic trainer is absolutely one of the most critical relationships you can have. I've been lucky enough. You recently had Scott Sheridan as a recent podcast guest, and Scott was the head athletic trainer up until about 3 or 4 years ago. So as head team physician, Scott was also involved. When I first joined the Philadelphia Phillies and the Rothman Institute, the legendary Jeff Cooper was the head athletic trainer, and then Scott took over for him. So I've gotten to know, but Jeff pretty much had finished by the time I started a little bit more significantly with the team. Mm-hmm. But, I would say that the training staff is some of your closest contacts. I think that Paul's wife and my wife joke that Paul and I talk more than our wives do. That's certainly not true, but certainly that relationship is very important. In fact, Paul and Allison and my wife Kathleen and I went out to dinner with Paul during the off season, and just to kind of bring the group together and catch up, because we do. There's dinners that happen that, I need to leave, or family events that I need to walk away from, because things are happening that we need to discuss. But your relationship with the athletic training staff is critical. So mentioning other contacts. So we have Justin Ahrens, who's our minor league training coordinator. Mm-hmm. He oversees the entire minor league training staff and minor league injuries. So he's somebody that I pretty regularly speak to or text, and that would be pretty much on a daily basis as well. So, we have a minor league injury, and either the head trainer from that minor league team, whether it's, again, any number of our teams, will contact me, or they'll go through Justin. We have Justin Tallard, who is our minor league physical therapy coordinator. So Justin Tallard is responsible for doing rehabilitation for all of our minor league athletes who are in through the rehab process. And so he may rehab some of our major league guys if they're not with the major league club. We have Joe Roush and Alex Plum, who are our athletic trainer and physical therapists who do our rehabs with the major league club. So these are all people that I've been in contact with. So anybody who's had a surgery, anybody who's coming off a recent injury, who's doing rehab, again, we get an update every day. I know it's crazy to think, but I read every single one of these emails, every single player, mm-hmm. So that I know that where they are in their process. Obviously, if they're post-surgery from me, I'm paying, real strict attention as to is there something that, we're concerned about or that we need to address. If they're a surgery by another surgeon, again, same thing. So we are very detail-oriented and keeping tabs on all of our players.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned Paul Buchheit, also Joe Roush, who is the assistant athletic trainer, and then Christian Bermudez, who is also an assistant athletic trainer with the Phillies. So the Phillies athletic training staff, veteran group of guys who were recently, I think a couple of years ago, named the athletic training staff of the year by PBATS. What can you say about this group specifically, and Paul, Joe, and Christian, just in terms of their work, their professionalism, and kind of how they make your job easier every day?
Well, I mean, that's the thing is they're with the players every day. I'm there on homestands. I travel, from time to time. I'm not at I'm not at all 81 home games, So they're the eyes and ears of everything that happens. They know what a player's like. They know when they're scared about something. They know when they're concerned about something. They know if it's really not a big deal or if it's something that, they've had before and it's something minor. In general, if they're asking me to see that player, it's because they need, another set of eyes on it. It's not generally to change anything dramatically. We're generally on, the same page. I tell all of our fellows and any of our junior faculty that are working with the team, you can learn so much from an athletic trainer, how they deal with a player, their physical exam. And when you're examining a player and you've completed the exam, what I always do, and I think that Paul and Christian and Joe can, really expound on this, is that I'll look at them and say, is there anything else that you think that I missed? Or is there something that you saw that did not show up on my exam today? Because their exam may have been right after an injury. It could have been the day after. My exam could be 2 or 3 days after, or even a week later. So what I want to know is, what was their exam like before? What is it like now? And is this better? Is it worse? Are you concerned about it? Did I miss something that you saw that I didn't particularly check on? Or are they asking me something that, we just saw something different? So it is absolutely a team event when you're going through something and evaluating. This is not a one-sided, this is not a dictatorship, and it can never be that way, and you will never have a successful result if it is.
Yeah, and you made a great point there. I don't think you can overstate the importance of the athletic trainers, Paul, Joe, Christian, being with the guys every single day, knowing their personalities, knowing how their bodies work. I think that's just so important as they get to kind of working with you as well. And in terms of working with you, I know a lot of our listeners who are younger athletic trainers probably very interested to learn about the entire process or timeline from, for example, an initial injury that requires surgery, on your end, to getting back on the field. I know there's so many moving parts, so many people and pieces that are involved, but could you kind of get into a bit of the detail of that overall process from, someone suffering an injury and then getting them back on the field?
Yeah, so obviously the severity of that plays the biggest role. I don't think there's any question in that.
Sure.
Obviously depending on is it a home injury, is it an away injury? And Major League Baseball, as you well know, Sam, the most of I would say nearly 100%, but not 100% of teams won't travel or won't have a physician at an away game. So if your visiting player gets injured, if it's at our facility, I'm evaluating the player. If it's an away game for us, our training staff's evaluating. They may ask, the other team covering physician to evaluate it. And, our job in that point is to communicate with the other physician. So if I see a player at Citizens Bank Park, I'll ask the head athletic trainer, hey, I probably, I would think, 9 out of 10 of the physicians I'm going to know, hey, do you want me to call so-and-so and let them know what I think, or are you good with this? And if they say, hey, I'd love for you to call, Tom Noonan with the Rockies, I'm happy to get on the phone with Tom. If it's, anybody, we're always going to do that. And if they're comfortable with it, then they say, I'll call Doc and, I'll pass along your findings. And I said, well, you obviously let us know how we can help. So it may involve getting some imaging studies for a visiting player. And again, the same goes for one of our players. So if they get hurt on the road, I may get a phone call, or Paul may call me and say, hey, so-and-so got hurt. Team Doc is coming over now. As soon as they're done evaluating them, I'd like you guys to connect, and we'll absolutely do that. And then depending on the severity, again, if there's imaging studies that need to be done, we may send them home if we're coming home soon, or if it's a close by location, they may get some imaging on the road. Depending on the results of the imaging, we may get them, back from the road if they need to be seen. If they're a minor league player, they may have had imaging locally, and then, fortunately we have, our minor league locations, with the exception of Florida, are all drivable within Philadelphia. We'll get a player in to be seen, urgently, and then, determine what needs to be done. And obviously, if they need surgery, then depending on the surgery, if it's a simple arthroscopy, then we're looking at, hopefully 2 to 3 to 4 weeks to get back. If it's, elbow surgery, whether it's a repair, that could be, 6 to 9 months. If it's a reconstruction, it could be 12 to 15 months. So, we really just need to follow the process as it goes.
That's great. And I appreciate you sharing that insight. There's so much that goes into getting someone, examined and back on the field and the rehab process. And there's so many people from the athletic trainer, strength and conditioning, team doctors. So really a all hands on deck approach there, which is interesting to hear from you. Steve, when you look at the growth of sports medicine and athletic training staffs across baseball, some staffs growing to 8 to 10 or more members. What does that say to you about the importance of sports medicine in the game of baseball right now? And also how far we've come from, the early days when most clubs maybe had a 1 or 2 person staff with a head athletic trainer and an assistant.
Yeah, I know it has grown dramatically. When I first joined the Philadelphia Phillies in 2007, we had a head trainer and assistant. We had we didn't have a third assistant. We didn't have a physical therapist located. Now we currently, as you mentioned, we have 2 assistant athletic trainers. We have a full-time physical therapist. We have 2 massage therapists. We have 2 strength and conditioning coaches. And we have a nutritionist. We have mental health. We have mental skills and mental health. We have a full-time psychiatrist that works for the team. I'd be reluctant to mention Jeremy Close, who's our lead primary care physician, who is trained in primary care, and without him, we can't do a number of the things, whether it's taking care of families or kids or the medical staff that needs medical care. So we have so many more things, and then you go down to the minor league training staffs. We have, as I mentioned, 2 full-time physical therapy coordinators. We have a minor league training coordinator. We have 2 athletic trainers at each of our affiliates. So as you mentioned, staffs have gotten bigger and bigger. It used to be, you had one athletic trainer at each site. We have strength and conditioning at each site. Again, mental skills at our various sites. So it has grown and grown. And what that tells you is the importance of keeping athletes healthy. And if we can avoid injury, obviously some are unavoidable, but the things that we can do to train our athletes and keep them on the field is of critical importance.
Yeah, and the pieces we've talked about, from athletic trainers to team physicians, are aligned so closely. One group that PBATS is aligned closely with is the Major League Baseball Team Physicians Association. You recently served as the association's president, now serving as their past president. I'd love to give you some time to share some more info about the MLB TPA, who makes up your membership, and also the goals and objectives of the group.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the Major League Baseball Team Physician Association is a physician group, and members are those that are taking care of our professional teams. Certainly, it's mostly made up of Major League Baseball team physicians as opposed to our minor league baseball. But each physician group or team is a little bit different in how they structure things. The TPA is a group that we meet once a year at the Major League Baseball winter meetings. We have a research symposium, which we present all of research that's been published in the past year that covers Major League Baseball or baseball injuries. And then we have a combined meeting with the PBATS group and our strength and conditioning group, where we do a medical education day on the Saturday of the winter meetings. And then we have a business meeting that is just our team physician group. And really the goal is, and we have an executive committee that is part of the TPA that I've been a part of for about 6 or 7 years now. And our job is to provide their medical director, who's Gary Green, who is employed by the league, with Gary Green and our TPA and our executive committee and executive board. We provide the recommendations to Major League Baseball through John Coyles and the commissioner's office. So our job is to help provide safety for our entire league. And, the policies that are set forth and come through our team physician association as well as PBATS. And, our goal is to do things that are going to make our athletes safe, whether it's, different things, whether it's, sliding, enlarging the bases and any of these number of things, all these policies, game day policies, we have an emergency action plans. We have certain guidelines that you have to be a part of to be a team physician. So you have to be in practice for a certain period of time, taking care of teams, have to be physician, sports medicine certified. So there are a number of details that are required to become a team physician, let alone a head team physician. So, you can't just walk off the street and be an orthopedic surgeon and say, I want to take care of a professional team. We really need to, to have strict guidelines. So that way we know that when the Philadelphia Phillies are in Washington, D.C., or they're in Pittsburgh, we know that they're going to get the same care that they get in Philadelphia as they do on the road. And that's the most critical.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Dr. Green and John Coyles at Major League Baseball do an absolutely fantastic job of driving the safety aspect of Major League Baseball, along with you guys at the TPA and PBATS as well. So baseball's in great hands medically there. Well, Steve, to wrap up today, I want to ask you, looking back on your career and reflecting a bit, your time working in sports and, basically for your hometown team in Philadelphia, is there something you're most proud of throughout your time with the Phillies, or a moment perhaps that you look back and really appreciate that you accomplished?
Yeah, obviously the last 2 years we've had, real successful seasons, just falling short, a couple of games from the World Series last year and in the World Series the year before. Keeping our athletes on the field, getting them to the point where they're able to perform at the most elite level. I used to think that, my height or, something about me, wasn't good enough to play baseball at that level. And the answer is it was my skill level, because it has nothing to do with height. It has everything to do with, I see plenty of athletes that are my height, my size, and they're just elite baseball players. So, these are obviously the best of the best. And I'd say the most rewarding thing is keeping the athletes on the field. Sometimes you deal with something that could be, you're not sure, you have a game 7 or a game 6, and you're just not sure that athlete's going to be ready to go. And combined with your training staff, you've gotten them to the point where they can allow their team to advance or to win an important game. So I think that's really important to me. And honestly, I would say the relationships are probably the biggest thing, because when you're around the guys on a daily basis and a weekly basis and yearly basis, you really develop relationships. And players come and go, and I'm fortunate enough to say that I had one of our former players call me within the last 10 days about his son, who's an 8-year-old, and he's pitching, and they have pitch counts, and he wasn't sure where he should be, and he said, I need to go to the source from this and find out what's the safest route for him. What should his pitch count be? How should he navigate this? And he's a former major league pitcher, coming to me to say, hey, how can I keep my son healthy, and what are the things that I need to do? And so it's those relationships that are probably the most important to me. Even when an athlete leaves and goes to a different team, I want him to know that, I'm always there for him, or I'm available if they ever need anything, and when we get a chance to catch up and at another city or another, different game, we want to know that, the athlete that you were taking care of was the athlete you took care of. It doesn't have anything to do with what team they're on. And I think that, probably the last thing I would add when it comes to athletic training is, and team physician work is your responsibility is to your player. Obviously I work for the Philadelphia Phillies, but, the bottom line is, and I have great management. I have, the absolute best president, the best GM, the best ownership in the group, in the league, I think. But not once have they ever come to me and said, this player needs to get on the field. They ask us, and we address that with them. So your player is your priority always, 100% of the time. It's never the game. It's never the team. Above them, it's the player. And if it's safe to get a player out there, we will absolutely do that. But that is the most important thing. So, it's, whether it's Dave Dombrowski or Sam Fold or John Middleton, they are 100% on our side. And treating your athlete first, whether you're an athletic trainer or a team physician, is by far the most critical thing you can do. I would say the one last thing, and we kind of broached the subject, but never actually used the word, but the term we use is availability, right?
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
In baseball, they always talk about the best ability is availability. That means, a player needs to stay on the field and not get hurt. But when it comes to, athletic training and team positions, availability is critical. And, I think Jim Andrews was really, a pioneer of this, even though he wasn't a head team physician of a Major League Baseball team. His availability to talk to other physicians, other trainers,
Sure.
Be available. That is probably, the most important thing. And so for the athletic trainers and for the team physicians, whether you're in the community taking care of a high school football team or high school team, your availability is what's most critical. And when an athletic trainer is calling you, it's probably because they need to talk to you. And so,
Sure.
having that availability and is a really important thing as well. So.
No, that's super helpful and awesome for you to share. And, that goes to show the dedication you guys have for baseball, for the players, and for what you guys do. So we always appreciate that. Like I said, Steve, thanks so much for joining the show. All that insight was awesome. We're happy to have, the first team physician on the show. It'll provide some great insight into what goes on behind the scenes outside of the athletic training room. And we wish you and all the guys and women on the Phillies staff best of luck this upcoming season.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm certainly glad to be a part of this.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Inside Athletic Training. We hope you've gained valuable insights, inspiration, and knowledge to fuel your athletic training journey. If you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite platform. And also, stay connected with us on pbats.com for more news about athletic training and sports medicine.